Hi, welcome to my channel and thank you to my subscribers. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. In this video, we are going to see how to add Okta as an identity provider to AWS Cognito using OIDC protocol. In one of the previous videos, I showed how to add Okta as an identity provider to AWS Cognito using SAML protocol, and I will add a link to that video in the description. So let's get back to this configuration. So I'm going to use AWS Cognito and Okta developer account, which is freely available. You can go to the Okta website and sign up for a developer account. And I'm going to use Chrome browser for doing the configurations and Mozilla browser for doing the testing. So let's get back to the configuration screens and start with creating a user pool with very minimal settings because we are not really worried about all the other configurations in Cognito. Right now, we are just going to focus on how to add Okta as an identity provider using OIDC protocol. You can always explore all the configuration at a later point of time. So let's create a basic user pool. Select username in the first screen, go to the next screen, leave it as default password policy, disable MFAs, self-service account recovery, and also you can disable all these options. We don't need that. Let's leave this required attributes section as it is. Go to next and select this option to just get past the screen and enter a user pool name. I'm going to enter it as SAML Okta UP. And don't forget to select this option, use the Cognito hosted UI, because we need this option to add to do a single sign-on with Okta. And we need to enter some random value here. I'm going to try SAML Okta and it is not available. So I'm just going to use SAML Okta 1. And this is just a random string. You can enter any value as long as it is available. And we need to create a public client. So I'm just going to name it as SAML Okta client and select the generate client secret option. And for callback URLs, use jwt.io. And in the advanced app client settings, remove this authorization code grant and use implicit grant. And please note that it is only for testing purpose and we should never use implicit grant flow for a real integration because it is not at all secure. And you will see this warning just below this option saying it is not a recommended option because it is not secure. But this is only for testing. You can remove phone and add profile scope and then click next. Review all the settings and create the user pool. So the user pool got created and this is the one, SAML Okta UP. You can have again review all the settings, make changes if you want to just explore few things. But here are the key things, like whatever client we created is under the app integration section. You can see it here. And then whatever domain we configured, it is here, the SAML Okta 1 US East Cognito.com. So the next step is to add Okta as an identity provider to this user pool. But before doing that, we need to make some changes in the Okta configuration. That is basically configure Cognito as a client in Okta. So let's create an app integration in Okta with OIDC protocol. And for Cognito, we consider Cognito as a web application. So we select the web application option, click next, and name this app as Cognito OIDC client. And by default, it's Okta selects authorization code flow, which is fine. So this sign in redirect URI is something we need to configure here. So go on to Google and search for Cognito OIDC identity provider. So the very first link here talks about how to add OIDC identity provider to your user pool. And here if you see the very first step, step 1, register with an OIDC IDP. So here they have mentioned that this is the redirect URI that needs to be configured in the IDP. So copy this, paste it here, and replace this user pool domain with whatever we saw here. Copy this and replace this user pool domain. Now this redirect URI for sign out, that is something we can remove for now. We don't need that. And let's select allow everyone in your organization to access this application and save the configuration. So now we have the client ID, a secret, and we have a configuration for the Cognito OIDC client in Okta. So the next step is to actually create a user in Okta. So let's do that as well. So I will just create it as test OIDC user 1, test OIDC user 1 at example.com. And for password, I'm going to use admin option and set a password for this user. Let's remove this and let's add another user as well. Test OIDC user 2. And I will use the same admin option and click save. So I created 2 users and I have created an OIDC application for Cognito. So the next step is to configure this Okta identity provider in AWS Cognito. So let's go back to the Cognito console and navigate to this sign in experience option and click add identity provider. And we need to select OIDC option and give a name for this identity provider. Let's name it as Okta OIDC IDP. So it asks for the client ID. You can copy it from here. It asks for a client secret. You can again copy it from Okta. And for scopes, let's use OpenID, profile, and email. And it asks for the issuer URL. So if you go to the Okta documentation and search for Okta well-known configuration. So let's actually search for the documentation. Just search for this URL well-known. So if you click this link, so what Okta says is this is the URL. So basically it is the Okta domain followed by OAuth2/authorization server ID and these values. So in order to get the Okta domain, just click here on the right hand side, copy this. So this is the Okta domain and copy this entire URL from here. And for this authorization server ID, we are going to use the default authorization server of Okta. So just type in default and you will see this document, this well-known configuration document. So copy this issuer URL from here and go back to Cognito. And here they say enter the issuer URL of your received OIDC provider. So just paste that value. Now we need to add the attribute mapping. So let's map the basic attributes like email, name, first name, last name. So this email attribute should be mapped to the email attribute from the Okta's ID token. So in order to find what will be that attribute name, if you go somewhere here in the sign on screen and click configure profile mapping. So here you can see Okta's user.email attribute is mapped to the attribute name email in the ID token. So just copy that, put it here. And then family name, you can see it here, it's exactly same. So these are kind of the standard OIDC attribute names, and Okta is using the same standards. So we don't have to really worry about whether the attribute name will be different or something, because Okta follows the OIDC spec. So copy this, add it here, and the identity provider is now configured. You can close this screen. And the next step is we need to go back to that client which we created. And if you look at this identity providers of this client, currently it allows only the users from this Cognito user pool to access this client application. So we are going to edit that and allow users from the Okta IDP to also access this application. So once you select this option and save it, we can copy the URL, just right click, copy the link address, and go back to Mozilla browser and type that URL. So this is the Cognito hosted UI screen, and you can see the option to log in using the Okta IDP. So if you click this button, it redirects to Okta. And if you remember the users that we created in Okta, we can go back to this people. So this is one of the users. Let me first try to log in using this user. Yep. So I was able to log in through Cognito, and then Cognito redirected to jwt.io with the ID token. So you can see all the details here, the given name of that user, test OIDC, the family name of the user, which is user1, and then the email address of the user, which is test OIDC user1 at example.com. So let me clear all the cookies and again log in using this same URL. Again, copy this URL. Again, click Okta IDP. And this time, instead of test OIDC user 1, I will use user 2. And now I was able to log in using this test OIDC user2 at example.com. And you can see the family name now changed to user2, email address changed to test OIDC user2 at example.com. So let's go back to the Cognito screen and see the users tab. So we are actually seeing a couple of user profiles which got automatically created, because when I logged in using that Okta identity provider, what Cognito will do is it will get all the attributes from the Okta's ID token and automatically create a profile for that user in this Cognito user pool. So you can select this user, you can view all the details of this user, like family name, given name, the email address. The email address shows not verified because we are not actually mapping that attribute from Okta. Let's see if it is possible to actually set that attribute as well. Like if you go to this Okta profile, and if you see this profile, I don't know if there is an email verified attribute or something. Yeah, I am not really sure. But if there is an email verified attribute, right, you can actually set that value to true in Okta and then map that attribute to the local attribute in the user profile. So if you go here, so it says active, but I don't see any option to verify the user attribute. So yeah, that is something you can explore always. Like there are multiple things that you can do after this, but this is the basic integration. These are the steps that you need to follow to integrate Okta as an identity provider using OIDC protocol with AWS Cognito. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add comments in this video and I will be happy to respond. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.